All right, Trails Collective world. Ian coming at you for the Trails Collective weekly live episode or rundown for February 22nd, 2023. Hopefully this all finds you doing well. Just came back in from Lake George myself. Spent a couple days with family out there getting the kids out of town. The intent was to see some ice castles, but with the crazy or any more not so crazy lack of winter, there was basically nothing left there. So it's well, it is what it is. Just talking to Dick off the feed before I climbed on here. They have some pretty long-standing or some pretty big in terms of numbers track workouts through the winter. So with the lack of relative winter at the moment, he said they had upwards of 60 people for their track workout. So pretty crazy. But here we are this time of the year in what's becoming different winters. So we are going to hone in on the Catskills here in this episode. Some of the prior episodes, and I'll still probably get back to doing it, I've rolled in some focal guests as well as bringing you guests from results from the weekend. And some of those, I don't know, I have fun doing them, but they end up going long. We're in a few hours, and I know that can get up there. But it also, I feel like, cuts off some of the discussion or dialogue from some of the entry guests. So this time I was just going to focus on the Catskills. So hopefully you all enjoy it. If you're joining us live, I think you can drop some questions into or comments into the Trails Collective's YouTube page, and we can push them through and bring them to our guests, or if you have any heckling or whatever you want to do. If you are catching this after the fact, it will be just wherever your podcasts live. And feel free to still drop comments in there too, and occasionally we'll get back to answer them. But however you're catching it, thanks for tuning in. So it's the intent of the Trails Collective to really just bring together the number of amazing entities that comprise a pretty awesome trail running community, whether it be runners themselves, whether it be RDs, whether it be run shop owners, whether it be non-for-profits and trail organizers. So many individuals and entities that create a pretty awesome community. I'm starting off here the past couple of years in a focus on the Northeast, and some get into the South as well, but honing in on the Northeast often gets maybe a little bit of a shade in the larger media space, which seems to often be focused on the coastal West and Rockies. So it is good to bring you amazing voices from this coast. And so it's been a fun process. So for all of those, you're supporting us through either sharing it in your own networks, supporting us as Patreon supporters, or just hopping on to listen and tune in. I really appreciate it. It's a good way, I think, for us all to come together. I feel like there's so much divisiveness in the world anymore that, for at least for me, the trail running community has the ability to bring us all together, regardless of maybe belief structures or communities or whatever. And so I think this is an opportunity to celebrate that. So what's on my radar before we jump in and here in a second. The TWAT Winter Edition just happened down in Virginia. Hopefully I can bring you a voice or two from that next week. I didn't get a chance to reach out this past weekend. Ryan Thorpe, maybe I'm coming at you. I think you just finished the 100-mile or the roughly 100-mile TWAT or the 4-loop. Stephen Larrick just capped off 48 peaks above 4K in the whites in a season. So hopefully we'll have his voice back on, as well as maybe covering the whites, just like we are the Catskills. My relative home where I grew up, Brandywine Trail in PA, Grace Langhan, nice work on an FKT there, which I think you just picked off. Stephen Lang, cool to see some of your videos on a pretty beautiful winter summit of Katahdin in Maine. And then caught Amy Rozecki. I don't know where she posted, because I can't even remember if Amy's on social media. But I think asked ChatGPT or something to that effect to give a summary of the Vermont 100. And it, I think, was a pretty interesting, fairly accurate response. And so maybe we can have her on for just a couple minutes to, I don't know, talk about that, because I think it's a pretty entertaining thing that's at our doorstep here. So that's a few of the things that were on my radar. But again, we are going to jump into a focus on the Catskills. I'm going to start off here and bringing in a longtime friend, Jay Friedman. Thanks for being on here. And Jay, you can either be on for the intro segment to plug your book here in a minute with Phil. And if you want to stick on and join us for the full, that's okay too, your call. And then I am going to also bring in Mike Suidy and Phil Vondra. Yeah, dude, somebody, yeah, who's there and could just shine a flashlight in your faces, like at the least, or maybe I know between the, that's better. I can almost see Suidy's little goatee there rocking. So we are going to go along with these guys in the Catskills episode as well. Mendy Gallo was a possibility of joining us, and then I'm going to weave in Dick Vincent here in just a second. But I want to start in this opening couple minutes. Phil, I don't know if I mentioned this. I can't remember whether I did in the email. But both, sorry, let me do introductions here. Sorry, I was going to jump right into it, but that would be a bad host here for those who may not already be familiar with these characters. So Jason Friedman coming to us from New Paltz. He's an emergency room physician. He dabbled in run specialty store ownership in a prior life, but wasn't able to hack it. Went back to emergency room medicine. He's a coach through the Leadville running community, and historically is putting in more miles, including trail per week, than I'd cover in a month. I'm not sure where that's gotten him to date, but it's there on paper, maybe on Strava somewhere. He's the creator of the Pain Cave podcast alongside his partner Phil here, and is working on a new book, which we will talk about here in just a second. Phil Vondra, another New Paltz resident. Phil has one of the sweetest accents west of the Atlantic, making him a curiosity, and mostly why we're having him on here, because I think it's kind of hot. And he's really run
you and every woman down south. I'll tell you.
I know. Yeah. Which is, if we want to get viewers and audience
in Abingdon, Virginia.
Yeah.
See some action.
Yeah, Phil's looking into a second home down there right now.
Yeah. Well, I've got many second homes down there already. It's got to move in my gear.
He's run a gamut of trail racing from both long and gnarly to long and not so gnarly, and has just completed the Catskill Mountains grid, which is what we'll let him weigh in on here as well. And Mike Suidy, to his left, our right. You'd think this episode should be about New Paltz, as Suidy is also coming into us from New Paltz. He's an educator. I'm not sure how that is for parents knowing their educator there. He was a trail crusher for a bit. Though I think his body and ailments, as he and I were texting about in terms of our body just breaking down these days, has resigned been more to maybe climbing at the moment. Maybe some, gym and outdoor rat as both. Yep. He has about as many Catskill miles under his belt as near anyone at this point, I believe, including a grid or multiple grids. I mean, I don't even know, 2. Yeah.
Yeah, I finished 2 this past year.
Just this past year. And that
the second one this past year?
Second one this past year. All right. So for you saying your body's breaking down and not liking going uphill, to have finished it this past year, you're still doing a bit of uphill there.
A little slower. That's all.
Slower. Yeah. He also created an RD, the Catskill Trail Marathon, a beautiful fall marathon, trail marathon, and co-RD'd Manitou's Revenge up until recent. And at the moment, resigning the RD hats at the moment?
Transitioning out.
Yeah, transitioning out. Yep.
Helping out this year, but transitioning out. Yeah.
Yeah, right on. All right, and then I might as well just weave you in here too, Dick, rather than just about to introduce some blank space as Dick Vincent there.
Hey, somebody has got to make these guys look smart, and I'm the one.
You look like you're in Bruce Springsteen's garage there.
Dick, you may make us look smart, but you make us look very unattractive.
Well, you need to get your eyesight checked.
Well, at least it makes you guys all look like you have a lot of hair comparatively. I mean,
I was going to go get a hat here in a second.
Yeah, I thought I was missing out as well, Dick.
Yeah.
And it's possible that during the episode that Dick is just going to kind of step back and pick up one of those guitars. Like we're probably going to ask him a question, and he's just going to be like, I don't even really care. I'm just going to turn around. I'm going to pick up one of these guitars, and I'm just going to start playing. You guys can just talk about whatever you want.
That'll sure bring the ratings down.
He's about as Beast Coast as you can get, I think, living in a sweet home in Palinville or Palinville. How do you pronounce that?
Yeah, Palinville.
Palinville. Right.
And there's some debate about that, but I one time was staying up at the, I think it was the Rock and River Resort up in the Adirondacks, which at the time, I don't know if it still is, was owned by Ed Palin. And he said his ancestors founded Palinville, and he had a spot in the Palinville Cemetery. that was free for him when he needed it. So I'll go with him. He said he calls it Palin Bill.
Did he, in the moment, maybe lay claim to your house there? I mean, because he could probably go back and somewhere find that he actually,
some sort of eminent domain or something.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So, pretty sweet home, sweeping Catskill views from his deck. What are you looking out at over there? I mean, I remember looking at the view shed, but I don't remember what I was looking at.
I'm looking due east, and it's across the Hudson Valley to the Berkshires and Taconics.
So here we are having you talk about the Catskills, but really you're looking out longly at the Berkshires and the Taconics.
Yeah, I know it. It's I'm in the Catskills, but looking at them. You have to go over there to look at the Catskills.
Seems like the Catskills often get some shade, whether you're talking about some Adirondacks or the Whites or whatever. And like now you got these measly Catskills, and no wonder, because you're looking out at the Berkshires.
Yeah.
Or literal shade.
Yeah. Literal shade. Yeah.
No summit views.
Yep. He is a coach as well as a creator and RD of one of the oldest and most iconic trail events in the country, which is the Escarpment Trail Run. And we will maybe mention that here in just a second and see what the status is there. But I want to lead in and just take the first couple minutes. Jay and Phil, you guys are both working on a project that had you on the road a little bit, which you are channeling into a, is this going to be printed, just digital?
No, it's print. Yeah.
Printed. People still do that in terms of printing.
Apparently, yeah. People still read actual books on paper and stuff.
That's interesting.
The trees aren't happy.
Maybe I could get it and I could just scan it in and just make a digital copy maybe and then read it from there.
I think if you buy it, you do get I think there's a digital copy that you can get. So yeah, it will save you the labor if you just pay the $20 or whatever it's going to be.
Phil's going to read the audiobook.
Yeah, that's
definitely Phil. Definitely Phil. If Phil reads the audiobook, our sales in Virginia are going through the roof. I'm telling you.
None of you people ever come to New York, but it'll be a bedtime story.
It's exactly right. They're just going to turn down the lights and just put that on the stereo.
All right, let's keep this family.
All right, so
I didn't say anything.
All right, so Jay and Phil, tell us a bit about what you guys have been working on and what you are just releasing that hopefully will have Vondra's voice to it.
Yes. Yeah, thanks, Ian. And thanks for asking me on to talk about it. I'm going to just talk quickly and then I'm going to hop off because I'm woefully out of place in an article about the Catskills. Although I did go to the Catskills, Mike is going to be very impressed to learn that I went to the Catskills without Phil's prompting yesterday, which is a very, very rare occurrence for me. Nice. So.
And he was smart enough to borrow some.
I borrowed an extra pair of crampons and everything else. So yeah, I mean, I am only several thousand peaks behind the cumulative total of the three other people on here. So
did you feel like when you were out there though that you couldn't log whatever you did because it didn't count as a run or an effort?
No. I don't log anything now. I'm transitioning out of anything that has anything to do with performance, tracking my ability, or anything like that. I've transcended to a different plane of existence right now.
Aren't we all? All right, back to it. Yeah.
Sorry. So so Phil and I, over the past couple of years, but really over the last 6 to 8 months or so, have been working on this book called Beer Hiking New York, which is going to be coming out later this year, and just wanted to take the opportunity to let people know to look out for it. This is a book that is part of the beer hiking series. This is a series of books that started in Europe, I think Switzerland, and has a few versions in the U.S. There's a Pacific Northwest version, a Colorado version, a New England version. I think that's it, right, Phil? I think we're the fourth installment in the U.S.
U.S., yeah.
Yeah. It's basically it's a guidebook for hikers who like to drink beer. And the idea is, yeah, which is all hikers probably. The idea is it's basically pairing different hikes throughout the state with a local brewery, and that brewery is generally 10 miles or less from the trailhead, except for in a very few cases, and sometimes even less than that. Some of them you can even walk right from the trailhead right to the brewery, and we even have one that actually the trailhead is the brewery, so that's kind of a cool one. It's a cool opportunity to learn about some different maybe places in the state for hiking. We got to visit a couple of parks that neither of us were aware of, state parks and local parks, and find some pretty cool hikes. It's a wide variety of difficulties and abilities. for the hikes. They're all in the kind of 2 to 10 mile range, so all easily doable in a day. Many in just a couple hours, and it's also a mix of some cool breweries that you've probably heard of, like Ithaca Beer or Industrial Arts, some of the bigger ones in the state, and also some small beer breweries that you might not be as familiar with, or that we think maybe you should be familiar with. So it was a lot of fun. There's 33 hikes and breweries in the book. It's at the printer now, and it's coming out in September. So keep your eyes open for that. There's a good chance there's 450 or 480 craft breweries in New York State right now. So we're barely scratching the surface here with 33. So don't get mad if your favorite brewery is not included. But if you see the book and you like it and you want us to do your brewery, then write to the publisher and tell them we need a volume 2, and we're happy to do that.
And then a volume 3, volume 4.
Retirement plan?
Maybe. Anything to add there,
A
Phil?
lot of fun. Checking out all these new areas, all these new breweries. Had a good time.
Yeah, tons of fun. A lot of places where we had been and knew about, like I said, but some that were totally new to me, and like state parks I had never been or even heard of, and found some really cool spots. So hopefully it's a mix of some hikes and some breweries that people know, and hopefully turning some folks onto some different stuff as well.
I think the takeaway is there's a lot of good beer and a lot of good trails in New York State.
Indeed. And I think we got almost every brewery in the Catskills, just to serve as a transition point. I think there was one brewery in the Catskills that didn't make it in, but for the most part, there's plenty of good Catskill hikes in there.
Yeah.
So as a relative number, I mean, so if you did 33 and you say every brewery in the Catskills, is that like there are 3 in the Catskills, or what's in that pod?
So there's, I think there's 6 in kind of the general Catskill area, if I'm not mistaken. And then it depends on how you define the Catskills, really. But I think we got most of them. We got, Westkill Brewery, which is one of our favorites in Westkill. We got Woodstock Brewing. What are the other ones in the Cats, Phil? Catskill Brewery in Livingston Manor is a real nice one. Crossroads Brewing in
Athens.
Thank you. But we actually did their second location, their tasting room location, which is in across the river from Hudson in Catskill. And I feel like there was a 5th one. The only one in the Cats that didn't make it in was the Rip Van Winkle Brewery, which unfortunately we didn't have a hike right near there that paired really well. And the other thing is, like, we could have done an entire book of just the Catskills and the Hudson Valley, and a large percentage of it is, but we wanted to touch on some different areas too. So it goes down to Westchester and Orange County and out into the city, out west towards Ithaca, Syracuse, Rochester. Did not make it out to Buffalo, unfortunately.
And did you guys do any rankings, or did you just kind of put a map or alphabetize them or regions or whatever, or did you break them down to like, hey, here was our top 5, top 3, or whatever?
Yeah, so it's less about ranking or anything or critic. It's not. When we talk to the breweries, we're not trying to make it a work of like we're not beer critics or anything. We're beer appreciators. So we're trying to make it a kind of, I guess, inclusive or however you say. So no, we don't rank it out or anything. We basically distribute it geographically. So it reads from basically the southeastern corner of the state towards the northwestern part of the state. It kind of just flows that way.
So figuring that was going to be the answer then. So for you guys, just on the spot, since we like to do year-end rankings and whatnot, off the top of your head, would there be 3 that combine both you like the beer and one of the kind of sweetest hikes, or what would be the top 3 for each of you off the top of your head?
What do you think, Phil?
Well, I mean, the one thing I would say is I was very, very impressed with the quality of beer across the board. I would say, a few years ago, you'd go to breweries, you'd say, beer, like maybe they had a good beer, it was an okay beer, but I would say like I didn't have a beer that I thought was mediocre. I thought everything was very good. So I think the quality and standard across the board was very high. I mean, I have a personal favorite because I love Spruceton Road. I love the hike on Westkill, and I love Westkill Brewing. I love what they're doing down there. It's a nice spot. It's, you know, they have food. It's very relaxing, the end of Spruceton Road. You get a nice view of Westkill Mountain. They build a big fire there. They have some like beers they always have on tap that are really good. And they have sort of some revolving beers that are great. So for me, my favorite would be Westkill because the hike is fantastic and the beer is great. And the whole like atmosphere, you know, is really nice there. So that would be definitely my favorite. I mean, the others, you know, I could say, you know, like I liked Catskill Brewing. I like the hike out there, Hodge Pond. But I mean, my number one would be Westkill, and you know, the others are all excellent as well. But I just, you know, have a soft spot for that place.
Yeah, it's a great hike. It's great beer, and it's a really great scene. Like it's just a cool place to hang out after a day.
Nice
of hiking,
family
for sure.
vibe.
Yeah,
Really nice.
very much so.
family
And
vibe
you get that a lot with a lot of these breweries, you know, family owned and operated, and a lot of the farm breweries are really, really cool. I would definitely echo what Phil was saying there about Westkill, both the hike and the brewery, as one of the highlights of the book for me. I mean, certainly, you know, hiking around in the Adirondacks and pairing that up with Lake Placid Brewery. I love Lake Placid. I love the brewery there. It's a great hangout. You know, it's hard to beat, you know, an Ubu ale on a cold
And that's
winter night.
One of the early ones as well, right? I mean, they've been around a long time.
Yeah.
And one of the early craft brewing scenes.
So much great hiking up there. You know, a couple of the breweries that you know we weren't quite as familiar with going in, but I think we really liked. One was the Drowned Lands, which is in Warwick, not too far from where we are now. Only been open for a couple of years, but already one of the most decorated beers in terms of awards and festivals in the state. Great vibe in the tasting room. Really cool people like committed to, you know, using the natural resources of the area and the farmland and everything else, and just making great beer. And that one's paired with a really neat little. It's a short, fairly easy hike, but it was kind of a neat little kind of town park that was a little bit of a hidden gem that we liked. So that was a good one.
That was very cool, actually.
That was a really fun day.
And it had a little bit of history to it, right? It had that like old house up on the top.
Yeah.
You could see the ruins of the
old house up there.
A couple of stream crossings and stuff, which was fun. I think we got a little wet.
You know, a couple other really great ones were, you know, Ian, a hike close to your heart, the fire tower on Mount Beacon. That's in there and paired up with the Hudson Valley Brewery, which is another really good brewery with you know, some local folks from the New Paltz area who started that brewery a few years ago, and it's really Beacon's a cool town, and that's a really good brewery.
That's got to be a challenge. I mean, I don't know whether you're highlighting a specific beer. It sounds like maybe just the brewery, but like in some of these areas, like Beacon or like Lake Placid, how do you really do you hone in on so you pair it with a specific hike, and in a place like that, man, how do you there's so many amazing hikes around there. It's kind of like, how do you relate to just pulling one hike around Lake Placid?
Yeah. So it's a great question. I mean, we try to include a variety of like hike types and difficulties and stuff like that. So some of them are really, you know, pretty simple, you know, flat strolls, or we have a couple of urban hikes. There's a couple down there's one in Manhattan and one in Brooklyn, and one in Poughkeepsie that are all, you know, roads and stuff like that, where, you know, we thought it was cool to, you know, see some different sites and really kind of just be inclusive of kind of the term hiking, you know, which can kind of include anything. And then it, you know, like you said, it can go up to almost anything up in the Adirondacks. Trying to pare it down in the Adirondacks is kind of just like, let's find something that's hard, but that a lot of people can do and is not going to be, you know, something, you know, we don't want anything dangerous, obviously, or anything that's going to involve any technical climbing skills, you know, mostly looking for things that you can do year round in most cases. So that narrows it down a little bit. You know, to speak to the Adirondacks specifically, I was up there, the weather was not great, so I had to do something that that we can include in the book that, you know, would fit those criteria, but also where I wasn't going to get in trouble, like up on, you know, Phelps or Whiteface or something like that when the weather turned bad. So, and in the Catskills, right, and in the Catskills, there's about 100. As these guys will talk about, I'm sure ad nauseum, there's about 100 different options for different hikes. So it's relying on guys like Phil and Mike and other people to kind of point you in the right direction. And we did that for a bunch of different places. Josh and Michelle Merlis helped us out with a lot of suggestions around the capital region in terms of good places to go, and turned us onto a couple of spots that I hadn't been to before, in Morrow State Park and Thatcher State Park, which were some really, really cool hikes and some great views in some of those places.
Can't forget Ithaca though as well.
Sorry?
We can't forget Ithaca.
No, in Ithaca, obviously, with my history there, that was, we had a couple kind of picked out right away that we knew we would want to do. So there's a couple in the Ithaca area that, kind of on the classic side, I guess, of, what you would point out for people coming to see Ithaca. So, it was a lot of mix and match. It was searching around on all trails if we knew that there was a brewery that we wanted to highlight, but we didn't know the area, what options are there. If it's somewhere where there's a lot of places to go, it's either relying on our own experience or those are the experts, or sometimes it was, finding what are the cool elements, like where are there great waterfalls. Like we tried to include a lot of good waterfall hikes and stuff like that. So, great views or something. So, yeah.
All right. So you guys plug the name one more time, rough time frame, and I guess people could just kind of Google where to find it or ask their bookstore for it.
Yeah. So it's called Beer Hiking New York. It should be out if Phil and I continue to respond to all of the emails from the editors and the publishers in a timely fashion. It should be out in first week in September. It's a real publisher and everything, so you should be able to get it pretty much anywhere. I know it'll be on websites that rhyme with Wamazon, but do look for it in your local independent bookstore. We're going to be. It should be available for pre-order online a couple months in advance of September. And then we're going to hopefully get it into, a lot of the breweries. A bunch of them have already expressed interest about selling it in their, gift shops and whatnot. And, Phil and I are going to see if we can get around to a couple of the breweries and, have some signing, beer drinking, hiking kind of parties with some of them. So, keep an eye out for that, and hopefully we'll see you out there.
There's a very good running store in Ithaca as well that might put a couple of copies in there.
Yeah.
Only I could put a couple copies as long as you're here to just kind of talk about it, Phil.
100% Ian.
People are going to come out. Yeah.
We'd love to do that.
Right on. All right, Jay, thanks for joining us here for a bit. Nice work on that project, I think, so far. Sounds like it'd be pretty sweet. Even coming from somebody who doesn't drink at all, I think that sounds pretty sweet. So look forward to
NA beers, actually. I mean, one thing I would say was that a lot of these places have NA beers as well, and they were pretty nice.
Yeah.
I think the thing with NA beers is it's like, for you people who already like alcohol and maybe you're just looking for a non-alcoholic alternative, that's where the NA beers come in. For somebody like me who's never drank, man, an NA beer is still going to taste awful.
If you don't like
I have no interest. Yeah.
I don't drink either, but a couple of them have root beer, and some of the root beers are pretty good. I know Crossroads has a root beer that's real good.
Yep.
Right on.
Yeah,
cool.
I love root beer.
Ian, thanks for having me on. I'm going to contribute very little to any discussion on the Catskills, but I'm only one peak away from finishing my round. So hopefully I could join these guys, not with a grid anytime soon or any of that nuttiness, but I've got at least one more day in the Catskills in my future. That may be it. That may be the end of my
left?
Black Dome. Yeah.
Oh, no, Blackhead.
Blackhead. Sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
Nice.
Yep.
I want to know.
Right.
Oh, it's just winter.
No,
okay.
he needs a winter.
You need a
we need
winter.
a winter.
I need a
Okay.
winter. I have a
What did
regular.
you do Black Dome and Thomas Cole without Blackhead?
No. I've done
That's what we're doing.
Blackhead multiple
When
times. In the escarpment, you hit Blackhead every time. So, Blackhead was actually, because of the escarpment, probably my second Catskill peak ever after Wyndham. But still need the winter. So that'll be it.
Right on. All right, man. Well, I look forward to that transcendence into that space, and I'll talk to you more later.
Thanks, guys.
Take care, Jay.
All right.
See ya.
See you, Jay.
All right. So mentioned there the grid. So let's back it up. So Dick, how long have you been living in the Catskills region?
I've lived here my whole life.
Whole life. All right. So now that we're getting into, we'll let Mike and Phil here delve into introducing maybe the concept of the grid and other peaks and all their experience. Let's back it up to kind of when you can remember in terms of just how this area has really developed. Obviously, the mountains have always been there. I don't know what the trails, and you guys can regale us with some of the stories here in a second in terms of maybe whether it requires or whether it makes more sense for efficiency to bushwhack some of these. How much is this area really developed? And I guess, how's it come on with the volume that you find on the trails and people like Mike and Phil kind of picking these off in a very kind of athletic fashion, so to speak?
Well, when I started running the Catskills and the Escarpment Trail, the trail wasn't even really maintained. And I think a lot of the trails in the Catskills were that way. The early years of the Escarpment, we would finish kind of sliced up from the weeds and the brambles. And I can remember times in sections on the trail thinking to myself, if somebody falls down in the trail ahead of me, I'm going to step on them before I see them. Fast forward to now, and there's trail maintainers for all the trails, and they're out there keeping it not only passable, but doing their best to keep it from eroding away as well.
And so that makes a big difference. In that 24-hour period or so that I was out with Sarah when she was going after the Adirondack FKT, she was referencing the first time I think that Jan went after it and set his mark, that it would have been so much harder for him in just that difference of X amount of years for when she had to do it, just because the trails were so much more beat in and she had all of the beta and the data, and this is the way to do it more efficiently. And all that's really changed. So for somebody like you, Mike, who now you just finished off your second, you've been diving in this over years. I mean, how much easier is it getting, or putting that in comparison to where Dick is coming from to where I guess Phil and Mike, you've both been hitting it now in terms of just the difference in space and how it just changes the game a bit?
When I started hiking here in the late 90s, the trails were pretty well maintained with some exception. It was the off-trail peaks where the real difference can be seen. My first round of the 35, which at that time I think entailed 12 or 13 trailless peaks, there was nothing. There was no path. There was no herd path. There was no trail. There was almost no sign of anyone else being there until you got maybe 100 or 200 feet away from the summit, and you'd follow a faint herd path up to the canister, which is why I did my first couple of rounds of the Catskills in winter, because at least if you had snowshoe tracks on the way in, you could find your way out. When I started doing them in summer, I was like, where do I go? I can't see my footsteps. Over I've done, 30 some odd rounds of the 35 peaks. Every time I've gone back to these trailless peaks, it's just easier and easier and easier and easier to find your way, because it's just the volume of people. When more footsteps hit the earth, it packs the dirt. The vegetation just doesn't grow, and now you have this delineation of where to go, and everybody is now looking for that line of least resistance in the mountains. And every time I go out with Phil, I say things like, "Man, you should have been here in 2003. It wasn't like this at all. I would get lost. I'd be walking around in circles, and now there's basically a trail in the middle of the woods."
And for that difference in experience for somebody like you, Phil, going at it now, do you think you'd have a preference there? Do you like that it's kind of, I guess it's some element, it's fun where it's rawer and more wilderness and you feel like you're kind of the only one up there. But at some level, it has to be kind of nice when you're going after a grid to have some of that work done for you and to be able to get in and pick a bunch off and kind of knowing where you're going and it being a bit more tracked out. Maybe that's just kind of a worthless question because you could see things from both vantage points, but do you think you would have liked it when Dick was, 50 years ago, or when even Mike saying, we should have been here in 2003? Do you think you would have had a preference there?
I think I would have preferred it when it was maybe a little bit more wild. But certainly times when I've been out there on my own and kind of, I'm happy to be on a herd path. But, I think it's the herd paths of kind of, I think I first sort of went out there with Mike probably 5 years ago, I'm guessing.
2017 we started getting
Yeah, so like
together.
6 years ago. And I remember we did the 9, and we did a bunch of things. And actually, there was some herd paths on the 9 a little bit, but compared to when we did it, as to how it is now, it's actually really changed a lot in that 6 years.
Yeah,
from my
the last
perspective.
5 or 6 years have been a significant change.
Especially, I feel like COVID got a lot of people out there hiking, and the herd paths developed. And I think I've definitely got a lot more confident just like heading off into the woods, kind of like knowing that I'm pretty good with directions, and learned a lot, especially from hiking with Mike, about how to kind of bushwhack, what's the most efficient way to do it. But sometimes I do like to see a nice herd path. It's kind of a bit of a comfort blanket. But definitely as I've done more, I've got more confident just to like head off. Sometimes, for example, we'll go out hiking and we'll be on a herd path, and we'll kind of decide it's actually not the best route on this herd path. This is a better route, and we'll follow for a little bit, and then like this is like skirting the mountain. We should go straight up. And like people bushwhack in different ways. Like I like to go straight to the summit. A lot of people will kind of weave around. I like to take a pretty direct route. I'm not worried about steep terrain or maybe a bit of scrambling. And this is another Catskill issue, is like multiple herd paths developing. I mean, you could have a whole, another like chat about the sort of erosion and the development of the Catskills, because one of the problems there is multiple herd paths developing on some of these mountains. And it's really interesting to see in the winter, because you can kind of see tracks. People have decided that's the best way, and you can see, 4 or 5 tracks up there. So, I think I prefer it when it's a bit more wild, but occasionally I do like to see a nice herd path.
And so let's, all right, set the stage. And I could have done it at the beginning. I'd like it to be flowing in conversation here too. Any one of you can maybe just paint the larger picture of the Catskills in terms of just metrics, how many peaks, how you're qualifying it, but then each of you maybe weigh in on, because we may have listeners from different maybe states or regions, or can you, I guess, make a comparison on how the Catskills are for you in that experience versus something like the Pennsylvania mountains, or like the Alleghenies, or the Adirondacks, or the Whites? What's the general character of the Catskills that make it maybe unique? But somebody just lay out some of the metrics of the Catskills, and then give me some of your feels for,
I can give you a broad overview. I mean, so the Catskills, have historically had 35 peaks over 3,500 feet, which was a collection of peaks put together by people looking for a bird. They were members of the Adirondack Mountain Club. They were looking for the Bicknell thrush, whose habitat was over 3,500 feet. So they came down to the Adirondacks looking for the bird, and the hiking list was eventually born. 2 of those peaks were over 4,000 feet. That's Hunter and Slide. And it became a peak bagging list. At that time, there were only 34 peaks on the list. Southwest Hunter was not included. It has since been included on that list. More recently, Double Top and Graham, which are on private property, have been pulled off the list. So now there's only 33 peaks. So it gets a little bit convoluted in terms of what counts, what doesn't. In terms of comparing the mountains, I can't compare them to Pennsylvania or the Alleghenies, but I can compare them to the Adirondacks, as I've done a couple of rounds of the Adirondack 46 as well. While the Catskills are obviously shorter, they are generally less technical, but the Adirondacks tend to give you a few miles of warm-up. And when you get to the summit of the average Adirondack peak, you're at the top. The Catskills generally go straight uphill from the parking lot. And then when you get to the summit, particularly on the trailless peaks, you could be walking around in circles for an hour trying to find the highest point that's 6 inches higher than any other place, because it's basically a desiccated plateau. It's just...
Now, why would I want to do that? That sounds terrible. I want to get up there and I want this epic vista, and like, I am here. I have arrived. This is it.
Yeah. Mike is correct. It's an uplifted plateau that's eroded. So the tops of the Catskills are very flat.
It's easier as you go up. It flattens out. I remember seeing a social media post a number of years ago from an Adirondack hiker that came down to the Catskills and was doing some of the bushwhacking. And they said something along the lines of, I know you guys in the Catskills think it's funny for us to walk around in circles until we find the part of the mountain that's 2 inches higher than the rest of it, but we're not amused. But that's how it goes. You just don't quite know where the summit is. I mean, Bear Pen Mountain, which is one of the 35, up until a recent LiDAR survey, I was always going to the part of the mountain that's not actually the highest point because I didn't know.
It changed like 3 years ago.
Yeah, well, it was a little before COVID. So it was probably like
Right.
2017, 18, something like that. A LiDAR survey was done. And finally, we had a really good, accurate survey of the Catskill summits. And yeah, it moved the location of a lot of summits. It changed the actual elevation of some of the peaks. That Rocky Mountain, for example, is not actually 3,500 feet. It's 3,487 or something like that. It's still on the list for historical sake, but a lot of it.
There's a couple that are over 35 that are not considered mountains, right? For instance, Camel's Hump's over 35, but they don't give it a credit as a peak.
Yeah. It's all about your definition.
The dink,
the dink. It's all about like elevation and prominence, and it has to be a certain distance from the next peak. And so the Catskill Mountain 3500 Club has a definition of what makes a summit and what does not. And there's even some peaks that don't quite, they probably should fit in, maybe some shouldn't. Who knows? But the list it's arbitrary anyway. So.
And then how about for you, Phil and Dick, similar to Mike Wade and some of his experience, and Dick, you chimed in there a little bit as well, but your experience versus some of the other areas in our region, the experience of place.
Go, Phil.
Oh, so I also did my Adirondack 46 last year. I had a little bit of spare time between going to the Catskills, so I decided I would do the 46. So I had a little bit of experience in the Adirondacks, and I would say, like Mike says, there's a little bit of a warm up in general, which can be good and can be bad.
Miles.
Some approach miles, like Alan is a great example.
Alan
has like 7 miles of approach, 1.5 miles of climb, and then I would say the Adirondacks was probably more burly overall. And if you have to bushwhack in the Adirondacks, I mean, you will know what bushwhacking is like. I did a short bushwhack from Iroquois to Marshall, I believe it was. I think it's about 3/4 of a mile, not much. And Mike said to me, one thing you need to watch out for is crevices that are filled up with vegetation that are actually very deep. Literally, I fell in a crevice within about 1 minute of starting bushwhacking, and I'm kind of laughing. I'm kind of over my thigh, all scratched up, a bit shaken up. And like the first thing Mike warned me about was crevices, and I fell in one straight away. And then, it's like insanely tight bushwhacking there, and the bushes do not want to move. The trees, I mean, in the Catskills, you can kind of fight your way through, push through a little bit, and some of it can be pretty hard. But definitely in the Adirondacks, the trails are burly, and the mud in there. People complain in the Catskills, say, "Oh, I was on the trail; it was really muddy." I'm like, you have no idea what mud.
They say my shoes got muddy. In the Adirondacks, your knees get muddy.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, nothing else. Yeah, you will go into your waist if you go in the wrong place.
Oh yeah. So, I would say the Catskills. Yeah, I mean the bushwhacking can be, a little confusing at times trying to find the summit, but I mean the Dax is definitely burly.
And that is the difference in my experience. I very, very little experience compared to any of you guys. I think when I was with Sarah up on, it might have been like Redfield or something like that. We were looking over toward, I don't know, maybe it was like something on the Great Range, one that kind of pokes off. Yeah, there you go. And I think that she was saying like maybe Ryan on one of his FKTs or something, or maybe his Adirondack attempt or successful one or however that went. I think chose to bushwhack straight across rather than come around. And I'm just sitting there looking at that. And I'm thinking back when I was first mapping out with Jan or trying to come up with a white course for whiteface. We were initially scoping out a bunch of different possibilities. And one of them was they said it would, we could use the slides. And I think Jan, in his ultimate wisdom, was, that it's really not what we wanted to be using, but I still wanted to see him anyway. And so going up the slide and checking it out, it's like, man, this would be pretty incredible, though, even though it would be wicked risky and wicked dangerous. But we were still thinking about it. And then, but to get from the top of one of the slides over to the top of the summit chair, that was that like little bushwhack there, which wasn't very long. But I think that was the first time that I had really bushwhacked, like an Adirondack bushwhack or whatever. And it was just like, sweet Jesus, like nothing that I had ever experienced growing up in Pennsylvania or living in the Northwest, or like even Hawaii, where the areas in the back were pretty thick. Nothing like that. It was just almost like impenetrable, whatever like that was, just crazy. So looking it over at some of the bushwhacks that you all do and what Ryan would have done in his attempt, I was just like, man, that is insane.
Yeah. Those pine trees, they live with a nonstop 40-mile-an-hour wind. And so they just, the cellular structure in that tree is just different. And when you hit it, it doesn't care about you.
That's a good point. That's right. In terms of how it's evolved. Yeah.
Your life, you are nothing to it.
It looks skinny. It looks like it will move, but it will not move.
And they're worse in New Hampshire and Maine. Right. They get worse as you go north. It's wild.
Wait till you get to Canada.
It's unreal.
And then, Dick, how about any experiences to add as well in terms of other places you've been, or kind of the feel or the experience of space in a comparative metric?
Well, first, I wanted to say something about the Catskills. As the plates of the Earth tilted and the Catskills rose, it also sunk in Pennsylvania, and that's where you got the depth for the oil fields and stuff. It was that same plate shifting that caused the Catskills, that caused that were the deep pits where the oil gathered. It was formed in Pennsylvania. So that's out of a John McFay book. I got that. And so anyway, the Catskills were this plateau that lifted up, and then it began to erode down. And that's why it's hard to find the top of the mountains and stuff, because, it's not like where the Adirondacks rose up as mountains. These are the whole land rose up as a plateau, but then the mountains are made by erosion coming down. And that makes it a little different than almost all the other mountains. An interesting thing is I kind of like getting over into the Berkshires. Berkshires are a lot smaller in height than, say, the Catskills, but a little bit like the Adirondacks, they're rugged at the top, and they're often bald peaks, and a little bit different than in the Catskills. And it's just they're completely different than the Adirondacks or the Catskills and the Greens for that fact.
Now, a lot of that comes down to rock type. So the Catskills being sedimentary rocks, where everything else we're talking about here is either metamorphic or granite rock. Those rocks just don't have the porosity to hold on to the moisture to allow things to grow.
Right.
Catskills do. So we have these kind of like these summits covered in trees where you can't see where you're going. But you don't really get bald summits. And if you do, it's because somebody cut them all down a long time ago, which is not that undifferent than the Adirondacks. A lot of the bald summits there were from surveys done in the 1800s. But it's very, very interesting if you get into the geology of things. It adds another level.
Yeah, and in the Catskills, almost all of it has been clear cut at one point. There's very little virgin forest left in the Catskills.
Yeah, multiple times in a lot of cases.
Yep.
So maybe we can get back to that too. We'll see where the conversation goes, but that'd be interesting to talk about some of the maybe virgin forests, if there are some, or any gems or things that you guys very much connected with in that regard. So Mike, it could be, and Dick, have you spent a lifetime on those trails and on those peaks, but have you also done like a grid effort? I mean, I introduced Mike and Phil, but I don't want to short you from I did like 6 of those.
I haven't. I've never really been a peak bagger. Mm-hmm. I like to go out in the mountains and hike and or run them as I started doing early on. I most of my peaks were running, but I never really felt like, okay, I'm going to just get a list and go and knock them all off or anything. I just would go for the ones that I wanted, go where I wanted to be at the time. A little bit like Jay says, he's not keeping track of anything anymore. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, I finished my 35s just because my friends were doing it. So I said, oh, okay, I'll go with you. But it wasn't anything that really that I had in mind.
Certificates at the same time, didn't we, Dick?
I think we did, didn't we? Yeah.
And the funny thing was, my first ever
I'm going,
Well, you and I, we got our certificates at the same club dinner, and what's your
number?
Sorry.
What's your number?
I think it's 3088.
Okay, and I'm 3055. So.
Okay.
Somebody's got to be getting that lucky 3,500 soon. Maybe I need to get in that lineup to try to.
Already.
It already happened.
Yeah, Julie McGuire's got the 3,500.
Yeah. But nice. The first ever Catskill peak was Escarpment Trail Run 2008.
Was it really? Okay.
Yeah. So it's quite funny that, I met you that morning at the start of the Escarpment Trail Run, my first ever trail run. And you and I got our certificates at the same time, multiple years later. I thought that was just like so hilarious. And that was an epic year, 2008 on the Escarpment Trail Run. Thunder, lightning.
That was.
It was just an insane experience. Like one of my craziest.
Year of lightning, correct?
Yeah, it was wild. I mean, the hail and the lightning, and I'm like, you can't have a race in these conditions. But everyone's out there running the escarpment.
Everybody was already out for a couple hours before it started, so there was no way rounding them up and getting them off the mountain.
So incredible.
The thing that worked in Phil's favor is has every race in the UK. So
that's right.
That was a bluebird day for him, in terms of
No, that's what I meant. Great weather.
Something I want to say about these two guys too. When you're talking about on the mountains and following the herd paths and stuff, these two guys have been up every one of these mountains so many times that they probably know where they are. If you just blindfolded them, took them out on the side of any one of the Catskill Mountains, dropped them off, took the blindfold off. Within about 10 minutes, they know where they are. Am I correct or not?
Foolishly decided that we should do the 9 at night from Moonhall, which makes it extra hard because it has about another 2,000 feet of gain. So it's 20 miles, about 7,000 feet of gain. And we decided we should do it at night. So we roll up to Moonhall with another friend of ours, Kevin, and we proceed on our way. We get lost pretty early.
Immediately.
Literally,
25 minutes.
We're not sure where we are. And of course, we're so stubborn, we won't use our GPS.
And it has one of the most solid herd paths in the Catskills.
But it's fall, so there's a lot of leaves on it. So, dark. But we get lost. Yeah. So we're basically lost, but we figure it out. And that's one of the easiest parts of the bushwhack. The hard parts of the bushwhack, we do perfectly.
Nailed it.
And then finally coming down back to the car, we've been out for 10 hours on a beautiful Catskill night, probably about 40 degrees, was it? Clear, lovely.
In the 40s, perfect hiking conditions.
We're probably 2 miles away from the car. We get completely and utterly lost. And Mike and I have done this a lot of times. And I'm like, I know where we are. I know exactly where we are. We go down here and we'll be good. And Mike gets out of GPS, has a look, he's like, Phil, come and look at this. He's like, we're not even close to that. We're so far lost. I cannot believe where we are. I thought I knew. And we've done the 9 between us probably almost 40 times ish.
Yeah,
38,
probably
37
close to 40 times. Yeah.
We're so lost.
Yeah.
It was pretty spectacular. But most of the time we can wander around without any GPS. We sort of know in the dark, rocks and trees.
In the dark, headlamp, no problem.
Like certain hikes I do, and I'm like, I know there's an arched over tree between East Rusk and Rusk. And I'm like, if you pass through that tree, you're going to be on the herd path. Yeah.
We've been out there so much that when somebody cuts a blowdown, you're like, where'd that tree go?
Yeah.
Well, I know, Mike, I think what's it coming off of, is it coming off a Lone or coming off a table going over to Lone? There's that rock you like so much. And
I love that mushroom.
I sent you a picture of it because you actually is one.
You sent me a picture. Joe Brown sent me a picture. Mindy and Lena sent me pictures. Everybody sends me a picture of that rock.
Yeah.
I sent you a picture on the way to Bear Pen and Blind.
I love it. Yes. Let's not go there.
Yeah. All right. So paint, for those who aren't familiar with it, and many probably are at this point. And to Dick, when you were saying you're never really interested, I'm assuming this is just a growing phenomenon. Yes, there's more people. Yes, there's more people in there. But yes, it's a different athletic space and endurance culture and more trail runners, and everybody's kind of up in the ante rather. So I'm assuming this kind of has a fairly exponential curve in terms of the amount of people picking off the peaks, but maybe also I would guess kind of the concept of gridding. So somebody just introduce the grid for those who may not be familiar with the concept and what that entails.
Mike's the person to do that, and maybe to mention the differences.
Yeah. So the history of the grid, as I mentioned earlier, Southwest Hunter was never one of the 3,500 foot peaks when that original list was made by the bird watchers. And so the first gridders, what they did is they hiked all of the 34 existing peaks in all 12 months of the year, which gave them 408 ascents. And it's not in 1 year, it's lifetime accumulation of summits. Once Southwest Hunter was added to the list grew to 420 ascents. I don't have the years on when the first grids were finished. What I can tell you, in 2016, when I finished my grid, my first one, I was the 23rd person to have done that. You can look up on the Catskill Mountain Club site, and they'll give all the dates and the mountains we finish on and things like that in order. Since then, that number has more than doubled. Since 2016, there have been, I don't know if there's been 10 people that have done 2 grids. It's probably close to that now. There's been a couple of people that have really gone crazy and done 4 and 5 grids. They just hike nonstop, presumably. But one of the things that's made the gridding a little bit tricky is with COVID, those 2 peaks that I mentioned, Double Top and Graham, that were private, for the first year or so of COVID, they required permission to hike. I mean, they always required permission, but you had to get explicit permission to hike, and you had to be in a county that adjoined Ulster County. So they weren't allowing people from New York City, for example, to come up and hike those mountains. And that, encouraged, or not encouraged, but it resulted in people doing it without permission. And because there's a register, a canister on the top of Double Top, people would sign in like, hey, I'm here on today. I live in New Jersey. It's like, well, you don't, you're not an adjoining county. So the landowners started to get a little bit pissed. And this eventually resulted in the closing of those 2 mountains. And they've been welcoming the climbers or for hikers for many, many years, and we're no longer welcome up there. And so the grid, so there's the main entity in the Catskills that had kind of managed hiking was the Catskill 3,500 Club. But the only thing that they ever recorded was your regular 3,500 foot peak finish, which was 35 peaks plus 4 of them in winter, which, as Jay mentioned a little while ago, he still needs Blackhead. You're also required to do Panther, Graham, and Slide in winter. So a grand total of 30. But what did I say?
I said Graham.
I said Graham. Sorry,
Yeah.
Balsam.
Awesome.
So 39 peaks grand total to get the membership. And so when those 2 peaks came off the list, no one really knew what was going to happen. They didn't know what was going to happen with the club requirements, with the grid. And so there was this kind of limbo time where things were kind of up in the air. And for a while, the 3,500 Club was allowing substitutes. So Double Top has a sub peak that's called South Double Top. It's over 3,500 foot. It's over 300 feet. I can't speak. It's over 3,500 feet, but it's on state land. It's not on the private property. So they were allowing that as a substitute for Double Top. For Graham, I don't know what they were accepting. I don't know if they were accepting anything.
Millbrook Ridge, was it?
Was it Millbrook Ridge? I don't remember. It was this weird time of limbo. And in the meantime, the group that had managed the grid was a hiking club called the Rip Van Winkle Hikers, and they disbanded. So now there's nobody managing the grid. The status of what peaks are on what list is up in the air. And another hiking organization called Hikers Anonymous kind of sprung up. And they had said, okay, well, we're going to take South Double Top and Round Top, which is over by Catskill High Peak, as the 2 substitutes for gridding. Now, South Double Top is over 3,500. Round Top is not. It was one of the 3 next peaks tied for the highest peak under 3,500 feet. Those are both off trail. They're both trailless. In the meantime, people from hikers and from Rip Van Winkle hikers reorganized into the Catskill Mountain Club, and they said, no, it's going to be Millbrook Ridge and Drybrook Ridge as substitutes because we don't want to encourage the bushwhacking and the potential trespassing over the Double Top.
Yeah, now the 3,500 club limits it to now 33.
And they eventually said there's no substitutes. So now we're only these 33.
Yeah, and they're at 33 because they don't want to encourage crossing the private property to get to those other peaks.
So the nature of these lists is now up in the air. So we have people that are doing the Catskill Mountain Club grid and people that are doing the Hikers Anonymous grid, doing different peaks and claiming the same accomplishment. And they're equivalent but not equal. What Phil decided to do was say, forget about both of you. I'm not doing any of that. I'm doing 33.
Yeah. So I actually spoke about this with Mike and like, kind of, he's a good bellwether on this kind of stuff, and just decided that like there's a core of 33 peaks that fit completely into the criteria of the 3,500 club and the historical kind of situation minus the 2 peaks. So I felt that this was something that would never change. These would always be on the list of 3,500 club. I mean, I really have a strong affinity to 3,500 clubs. They do a lot of work for the Catskills. The people that I've met there are a very, very nice group of people. They're really into preserving the mountains, getting people out hiking, educating people about the Catskills. So I just decided that, even though I wouldn't get a patch or get a number for either Hikers Anonymous or the Catskill Mountain Club, that this was really what I felt was the right thing to do. I couldn't go to South Double Top because I felt I'd be encouraging people to trespass, and it has been proven that people go to South Double Top and then sneak onto Double Top and go back, because everyone puts on Strava, there are heat maps, and it's been proven. The Drybrook and Millbrook Ridge, they weren't really summits, they were under 3,500, so I was like, that doesn't make sense as well. So I just felt that long term, it was just better to do the core peaks of the 3,500 club. That's the club I have the most affinity with. So that's what I'll use for my grid.
And by the way, you did that all in 1 year, right? You got your grid.
Yeah, I did it all in 1 year, consecutive. Every month I did the 33 peaks. I did a bunch of extra peaks as well, but just like if I'd finished, people would say, hey, you want to go and do this peak? I'm like, sure, I'll go and do it. I did some ultra marathons, did a couple of 100-mile races, did the Adirondack 46 as well in there. But I just felt it was the right thing to do. And also I didn't really care about a patch. I was just like, so what? I want to do this. I think it's good. I think it's the right thing to do. It just felt right. So that's why I kind of went with the sort of, I hate to use the word, but a 3,500 club grid, because they don't have a grid and they don't want to have a grid. This was just like a little adventure that I planned. And I wanted to just do it, under my own terms, go out with a bunch of friends hiking, and just kind of see if I could, maintain the momentum for 12 months.
And when did you start?
Started March 2022.
And you finished?
February 2023.
And so that's just for those of us who don't live necessarily in that area, but you went up and got the Adirondack 46 as well, which is also not right around the corner for you, which is just mind-boggling for people who maybe spend a life kind of going after these peaks or one concentrated number of years and really picking them off. I mean, it seems crazy. And so I guess for you guys, maybe you have the advantage of being pretty fit, pretty sturdy, can kind of, and you've got the endurance base or whatever. I mean, what does an average outing look like? Like how many peaks are you often picking off at one time for one effort? And then I'm assuming there's like a handful that are like 1 or 2 at a time.
Well, every one of those months Phil started with 9 in a day. So.
Yeah, I'd always do the 9.
Yeah.
And that's a good, like a 20-mile day, about like 5,500 feet again, 6,000 feet, kind of depending where you do it from, a little bit more from Moonhall. I mean, so 9 would be the most. And then sometimes, I mean, in February, so So this month when I finished, I did them all in 6 days of hiking, 7 days. I wanted to do it in a strict 6 days, but we had a day where it was incredibly cold, like really, really cold. I just felt it was a little too dangerous to be out there. So I didn't go out on that day, but I went out on, the next day and got them done in 7 days. But those were like bigger days. So I did the Catskill 9, and then I would add Panther on the end. So that was 10 peaks in one day. It was 26 miles, probably about 7,000 feet again, maybe slightly over. So, I tried to like group as many together, but like, in some of my other months, I was trying to spread it out a little bit because I was like, I was done in like 9 days. I was like, I'd rather like have 12 hiking days this month. So I was like being a little bit more, having some easier days, spreading it out a bit more, just kind of enjoying it a little bit. But like February, I really kind of wanted to get it finished. So I was like, I did it in a week, basically.
And I got to point out that what he's doing, though, when you hear him talking about knocking them off this quick, for the average person listening on this, these aren't normal things to do. Like when I dropped you off when you did your when you knocked off 5 that day, but you knocked off Plateau, Sugarloaf, Twin, Indian Head, and then Catskill High Peak. Those are really long, hard days. So if somebody's coming to the Catskills to start this, pick 1 or 2 at first and start to figure out what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, the Eastern Devils Path is about 9 miles with about 4,200 feet of gain, I think. And then
and every step is rugged.
Yeah, and it's pretty
step
burly.
is brutal.
Yeah, every step is terrible.
Yeah.
And then high peaks are just under 7 miles, and that's about probably about 2,000 feet, 18,000 feet again, something like that. Sorry, 1,800 feet again.
Because I dropped you off, and then I went like to breakfast or something, and then I checked Strava, and you were done with the first.
I was like, Eastern Devils Path, let's get that done.
This also wasn't Phil's first time through these peaks. Like he had done them a few times. We had probably done a couple of rounds together over the years. He, last winter he had done the winter FKT in 4 days on 3.5 days. So, he's seen these mountains in all kinds of conditions. We've discussed over the years, like what's the best way to efficiently connect peaks together. And if you are doing something like this, there's always enjoyment involved, but you're going to get more enjoyment of, cruising and really taking pictures and hanging out and having lunch on a ledge. That's not what this was. This was business. He had a plan. It was an athletic pursuit. And every month on the 1st, if the weather was not awful, Phil went out and he executed as quickly as he could to get those peaks done.
It started like as a bit of fun. Yeah. I was kind of like, in March, I did the 9 early in March, and then there was like a week left in March 2022. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to finish around this month. So I went every day, 7 days hiking, finish around. And then I was like, you know what? Why don't you try and do that next month? And then, I kind of got to like 7 months and it was still a bit of a joke, a bit of a laugh. I was like, could I do another one? And then I got to like 9 months and I was like, oh, this is real now. Yeah. This is like, don't twist an ankle. Don't get COVID. Don't get, like this is real. Like this can happen.
My memory was that happened a little bit earlier.
Yeah, it probably was.
That happened once you got through the summer.
Yeah,
the summer months,
September
the summer months are always the big question.
Yeah.
As someone who's done multiple rounds in the Catskills and all the seasons, you might think that February is the toughest month. No, August. August is the toughest month in the Catskills. August is where you can't see where you're going. The black flies and mosquitoes are going to carry you away. Yeah. You're sweating, you have swamp foot. It's disgusting in August. That's the hard.
You might not have any water as well.
Yeah.
Springs might not be running.
Springs are dried up. It's awful in the Catskills in August. So once Phil got through August and September, then he's like, okay, I'm over the hump.
November was very hard for me as well because there's so many leaves down that like you can't see herb paths and you're twisting your ankles and your knees like all the time. Like November really beat me up and I was deep into the Adirondack 46 then as well.
Yeah. Wasn't that our night 9? in November as well.
So it was
November. Yeah.
We're not doing that again.
Yeah, that was also when we did the 9 at night.
We've done the night 9 grid in November now. We don't have to do that again.
Never.
So So in terms of the structure of picking multiple off at once, Dick, you're about to, or probably pretty soon, go live with Escarpment registration. Again, this iconic race that goes through the Catskills that was really at the forefront of trail racing really anywhere. And you've continued to shepherd that thing through to now, which is just this epic experience. Mike stepped off there, but you were with the Manitou's Revenge for a number of years. Phil, I'm sure you've done them all. I think, I've done them all at this point as well. How many of the peaks do you pick off if you were to do all 3 races?
So Escarpment, you're going to do Wyndham and Blackhead, right? Dick, this is what I remember. And then
there's other peaks in there, but they're not 35s.
Yeah, right. Like Stoppel and Accra and
Burnt Knob
yeah. They're on the Catskill 100 highest, which is probably another area for discussion. But so Manitou's, you're going to do Blackhead. You're going to do the Eastern Devil's Path. So you're going to do Indian Head, Twin, Sugarloaf, and Plateau. So you're going to get 5 on the Manitou. So you're going to get 6 because you're going to have an overlap. You're going to have Blackhead between the 2 races. So so strictly 2 on Escarpment and then 5 on Manitou's.
And then 4 in Catskills.
Yeah, 4 on Catstail as well, yeah.
Panther, Slide, Cornell, and Wittenberg in Catskill.
Panther as well.
That's interesting that Catskill has the greatest concentration of 35s per mile. I guess that would make that highest density.
Yeah.
I think that section there on the Devil's Path in Manitou's Revenge has got 4 real nasty.
Oh, like all right there.
7 miles.
But for the race distance, right, as an event, yeah.
Yes.
So
you're gonna so you're gonna come up from Fox Hollow. You're gonna do Panther. You're gonna then go to Slide and then Cornell and Wittenberg. So
for some of these, and Dick, just plug Escarpment while I have you. Let the listeners know. Some may be catching this after the fact or not live, but just plug Escarpment, the overarching view, and then where it's at and when they can find registration to open, just because it's this iconic event. We're talking about the Catskills. Give them the gist.
Yeah, well, Escarpment, for those that maybe haven't heard of it, it's 30 kilometers or 18.6 miles, depending on what trailhead sign you look at. And it goes over Wyndham, Burnt Knob, Acre Point, Blackhead, Stoppel Point, a little bit of North Mountain and into North Lake. It's always the last Sunday in July. I'm in the process right now of getting my permits taken care of. I was talking with the state today on that. And I'll probably go open registration in the middle of March. I kind of like to know I'm going to get the permit. I never used to worry about that at all. But then with COVID, there were 2 years I didn't get a permit. One of those years I went virtual. And then we'll open it up. And I'll probably also offer the virtual option this year as well. I have a Facebook page called Escarpment Trail Run. And if you go there, you'll be able to find the link when it goes live, or you can go to escarpmenttrail.com.
And this is what year?
This is the 46th year.
46th year.
It should have been the 47th, but we lost the COVID year there. I did have it virtual the second time. So I'm looking forward to getting this to 50. Not that I'm quitting at 50, but I don't want this.
We won't let you.
Yeah, you guys got to be there for it too, So it's been something I founded, and it's been a long, beautiful ride for me. A lot of the people I know these guys probably because of the Escarpment, so many friends.
Can't forget it.
Yep. 2011, my first Escarpment was the first time I ever did a Catskill peak in summer. I had only had 175 summits in non-summer.
That tells you he doesn't like the summer.
And that's what I learned. I hate summer in the Catskills. my biggest obstacle to both grids. I finished one in August and one in September. Brutal.
That's wild. All right, so let's shift gears a little bit. Let's get into, I guess, some favorites out there. Let's delve a little bit into some of your favorite maybe places or outings or some sort of epic adventures in the context. Then maybe shift into, or we can kind of blend all of these. Some of the maybe biggest but maybe most entertaining mishaps. I mean, Phil, you ventured into a little crevasse there, so to speak, earlier. Let's get into some favorites, some kind of epic mishaps, and let's get into some of the juicy details maybe for each of you. Some story time.
I mean, I've got lost in the Catskills. I mean, people are like, "Oh, he's done the 9." Like, I know, I think I've done it 18 times now, and I'm like, I've been on the 9, and people are like, "There's no water on the 9." I'm like, I found water on the 9 because I've been so lost. I'm off the wrong ridge, and I'm like, I'm so stubborn. I won't use my GPS, and I'm like, "All right, you got to use the GPS." I'm like, "Oh yeah, you're way off course," and corrected myself and got back on. And there's times that I've been like, again on the 9 lost, and I'm like, oh, I think that's Balsam Cap I'm looking at there, and then I'm like, no, you're looking at Slide. I'm like, you're looking completely the wrong way. I've done it so many times, but I still get lost out there. And like we were saying, on night 9 was just like, it was so much fun, but it was so crazy. It was a real eye opener for me that you can do these things so many times and think you have such a good handle on where you are. And then, especially with Mike and I, and our other friend who was with us has done like 6 9s maybe.
Yeah.
So, we were well over 40.
Yeah, but he hasn't done it alone yet.
No.
So he's still following us.
You've been talking about the 9 laced in throughout. Define the 9, or what is the 9?
So, as a runner, as a hiker, the classic thing is to do a loop, right? That's the idea. You want to start, you want to go this way, you want to come back over there. Minimal backtracking. Loops are classic. You don't need a car spot. They're great. So the 9, you can either start at the Slide Mountain Trailhead, you can start it at Moonhaw, or you can start in Denning. And I think the most classic way is to go to Denning. And so you hike up a road for a couple of miles, an old road, get on a trail, cross the Neversink, and then you head up to Table Mountain. You do a quick little out and back to Peekamoose, and then it's on. You drop into the woods, and you go over Lone, which is trailless. You go over Rocky. You go to Balsam Cap and Friday, and some of the thickest woods anywhere in the Catskills. And then when you hit Friday, you have to traverse this little mountain, this little non-peak peak that's over 3,500 feet, but doesn't have a lot of prominence, called the Dink. So you go over the Dink, and it's
an appropriate name for it.
It's one of these places where
it used to. It's quite legendary. The Dink, it's quite feared by bushwhackers.
It's gnarly.
People like the Dink.
It's gnarly.
Oh, that's funny.
The Dink is one of these places where there's like one bad way to go, and every other way is worse. And so you get over that, and then eventually you pop out on the trail up to Cornell, and you go up to Cornell.
So I would say, sorry to interrupt, but the first time Mike and I did it, so 2 things about this. The first time we did it, when we got over the Dink, I was so happy to see a trail. I literally could have got down on the ground and kissed the trail. I was like, I'm so happy that we've done bushwhacking for the day. And that night I got home and had a shower, and I was like, I didn't get too scratched up. And like, I got 1,000 scratches on me from going over the Dink and the bushwhacking. This was
the
2017.
This is 2018. The next day he did a podcast with Jay Friedman, and Jay said, "What the hell happened to you?" And he goes, "I went to the Catskills with Mike yesterday." He goes, "Okay."
I got so scratched up. I had 100 scratches on me. I was in agony in the shower. Every scratch was like hurting.
Yeah.
That was like a wild experience.
So,
and I was
fine. I was blood free. I don't know what his problem was.
I was scratched. Totally scratched.
The newbie over here.
Yeah.
Anyway, once you get back to the trail and Phil kisses the ground, you go over to Cornell, a little out and back to Wittenberg, and then over Slide, and then you cruise on back to Denning. And it's about 20 miles, give or take, and 5,500 feet of vert, give or take. And like 8 of those miles are off trail. It's just like this classic long Catskill day. It's hard, but it's really attainable by I think most people could hike it in a day. Like, if your day is 12 hours or 16 hours, like it's doable. Start in the dark, finish in the dark. It is attainable. It's a long, hard, tough day, but
worthwhile.
You'll be really, really psyched when you get done.
Yeah.
It is a proper effort out there. Really, really good. So, and it's the most you can link up in under 20 miles. You can't link up any more peaks in under that distance in the Cats. So, and Phil and I have both completed gridding the 9, which means we've done that loop in all 12 months of the year, at least once in the dark from all 3 trailheads, and at least one time
there is a secret
solo
patch that maybe not so secret with Ian's 5,000 listeners.
Or at least 5. I mean, we've at least 5.
Yeah. I think it's good enough.
We're the 2 holders of the Catskill 9 grid patch. So.
Yeah, but single year gridder for me.
Yep.
But
so
it's one of the best loops.
So how about favorites in there in terms of a favorite trail section or a favorite peak or just one that you could do? I mean, you guys do so much up there, but like I could do this trail or this peak. I guess if listeners are coming in to do just like they've got a 1-day shot to just experience the Catskills, where would you send them?
I mean, I would probably, it sort of depends what they're after, but for me, I'd probably go and do Westkill. Because the Black Bridge looking up is one of the best viewpoints, especially if you can get up there early and get a sunrise.
Yeah.
It's a stunning view, and it's just a nice hike. I mean, it has a nice spring on it. It has a river. You go across the river there, which could be beautiful. There's a bit of a waterfall there. Some of it's steep, some of it's like flat. Has a full summit. It's just has like a little bit of everything. The summit actually has a sign. It's like one of the only Catskill peaks that actually has a sign. It's the only one, right? Weird, right?
Yep, only one.
Once you get over 3,000 feet in the summer, the forest is just beautiful.
Oh, it's beautiful. I mean, it's definitely one of the things I love about the Catskills is just once you get into the balsam forest, it's very magical up there. But it's at the end of Spruceton Road. Yeah. It's a beautiful road. You just drive down this like road. It's a dead end road. It has the brewery there.
Yeah. You go to the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. So
it's amazing.
I think another like short favorite for me would be Friday and Balsam Cat from Moonhall. Yeah. Very, very punchy, steep climbing. It's about 6.5 miles round trip, about just over 3,000 feet again.
Yeah, it's the most bang for your buck.
Yeah, and there's a B25 wreck if you want to bushwhack off the trail and see it, which is actually just incredibly impressive. Yeah, it's a big plane, big engine parts, big body parts of the plane out there.
That's the
sad story kind of to go with it.
I think that's the biggest plane.
That's a really, really incredible hike, and also just beautiful forest up there as well. Like you get a decent-ish view from Friday. But the forest on Balsam Cat's very, very nice as well.
And you're going to be alone on most days.
Yeah. Most people don't go down to Moonhall. No. I mean, I also like Balsam Lake Mountain. I'd say it's one of the easier hikes. It's probably between that and Wyndham, I would say is probably the 2 easier hikes in the Catskills. But I like Balsam Lake Fire Tower just has gorgeous views. Like
I agree with you on that Balsam Lake thing too. I think it's the trailhead that starts the highest in elevation.
It is. Yeah.
When you're getting to it, you drive it up and up and up, and you're fingers. But also add that little loop in if you were to start from I think it's Dry Brook Road down there, and you go past the first turnoff up to the fire tower, down and then loop around and come up. That's what makes it a very nice loop and such a beautiful, beautiful hike. And the fire tower is fantastic.
Yeah.
I do like Sugarloaf. It's just a nice loop. I think Sugarloaf's a beautiful mountain going up there, and depending on which way you want in the winter, going up that ice field is wonderful. But the west side is
super dangerous. Yeah,
super dangerous.
Yeah.
But if you like a little adventure in the Catskills, that will give it to you. I don't recommend people coming down it because I think coming down ice is 10 times worse than going up.
There's a really nice loop on that where you can come down the other side, which is very manageable.
So speaking of that, then danger. Mentioned some of your, and so Phil, you talked a little bit. Dick, you as well, and one of your favorites there, and Mike, for you in terms of a favorite or one that you'd most recommend for people if it wasn't already covered by Phil or Dick.
Yeah, so I think when you look at favorites, you look at a couple different things. What are you getting out of it? Is it like a chill day where you're really enjoying yourself and you want some good views? Wyndham High Peak, it's a couple of miles. It's not a lot of vert. You get views to the north, views to the south. Man, that thing it's so good. It's hard to match for the bang for your buck. The effort level is less than average, and the views are better than average. You want a little more effort? Wittenberg. Wittenberg has the most expansive view aside from the fire towers in the Catskills. You get beautiful views of the Ashokan, but you're going to be dealing with some rock ledges. You're going to be doing some scrambling. You're going to use your hands. It's cool. It's a little bit longer. It's a little bit harder. And then, if you want something that's really hard, I mean, you can use your imagination. There's so many really, really good link ups. There's a loop called the Furby loop, which doesn't have a lot of views per se, but it's a fur big Indian eagle loop, and it's minimally 10 miles. You can tack on balsam and add a few more to it. And you're going to be worked in like 12 or 13 miles over the course of a day, because most of those miles are off trail. And if you're breaking trail in the winter, which Phil and I have done,
you a good story about that. So Mike and I decided we use a Furby loop one day, and basically we breaking trail, and it's the worst type of breaking trail because it has a crust on top of it,
soft snow under.
So you punch in and you punch out.
You get stuck.
It's like you get double punched. So we're breaking trail, and we're a couple of idiots, and we're up there going along.
We're trading off
and
getting thrashed.
We're cruising along, and we're having a good day, but it's a lot of work. Yeah. And we get to Eagle, and some guy comes rolling up there, and we're like, this guy's probably broken out from Kenley Hollow up from Balsam and out to here. It's gonna be sweet.
We thought we were gonna get a bit of relief.
And we're like, hey, where'd you come from? And he's like, oh, I just bushwhacked straight up from McKinley Hollow. I was like, oh, shit.
We followed his tracks for 200 feet.
Yeah. And started breaking trail again.
And then we were back.
That was Valentine's Day as well. It was our romantic
That was our romantic hike in the Catskills. Yeah. So in a 10-mile day, we had 200 feet of broken trail.
We broke the whole thing
out.
It was brutal. I mean, it was just so hard.
So, yeah,
we were fit in those days.
Yeah, we were fit.
We were in good shape.
There's a couple of things that where I like to go if you're looking for something short and sweet. You got a couple hours, and for the runners that want to really get a hard workout, but they don't want to spend a lot of time in the mountains. Yeah. It's just going up to Stony Clove, and you got two options. You can go up Plateau, which gains about 1,600 feet in a mile 0.1. I think it's 1,650 feet, something like that. And you can be up and down it in less than 2 hours. Or you can be just a mile down the road before that, go up Becker Hollow. Becker Hollow is 2.2 miles to the fire tower on Wyndham. First half mile is pretty darn runnable, but it's 2,200 feet of climb. And again, you can get up and down relatively quickly. Get a real I'm talking about somebody just looking for a real hard workout. Those two, drive to the base, get out of the car, game on. And
if you don't mind running some pavement, there's a nice figure 8 loop, which you can link on the road from Becker down to the campground, up Plateau, and then down to Silver Hollow and back up to the road.
Yes.
And that will kick your butt.
Yep. Mm-hmm. But those two right there for just, hour and a half, 2 hours, you really want to grind it out. Those right there are good ones.
Yep.
I almost got Steve Lang's record, by the way, Mike. Yeah, he was 26 minutes going up Plateau. I had him until I fell, but of course I was coming down.
You'll get it next time, Dick.
I get it next time, but hopefully not drawing as much blood.
Yeah. So the falling down and the blood. So how about some of the most, epic, precarious situations you guys have found yourself in, whether it be humorous or not, and found yourself back out of?
The sketchiest situation that I've kind of been in is I was doing Sugarloaf and Plateau with my wife, Tara, and another friend a number of years ago. And we're coming in from the north. It's the easiest way from North Mink Hollow. And we come in and we decide we're going to do Plateau first. We go up Plateau, we come down. And the conditions were ice with a couple of inches of powder snow on top, which is pretty much the worst winter conditions you can imagine because you
yeah.
can't see what you're stepping on. It could be water ice. It could be rock. You don't even know.
Don't work that well.
Crampons are going to twist your ankle. Micro spikes. Maybe there's too much snow. Yeah. There's really you're not going to use snowshoes. And so we do that. We come down, no big deal. We start heading up Sugarloaf and we're following tracks. We say, okay, somebody's been up here. And then we find blood. And then the tracks end. So we keep going and we summit Sugarloaf and we come down the other side of Sugarloaf, which is usually the easiest side. And there's one particular place on the east side of Sugarloaf where if you've been on the Devil's Path enough times, there's a tree and a rock slab and roots that go across the rock slab. It's a very iconic place, completely covered in water ice. And I'm looking, going, how am I going to get down here? But I'm still walking and I catch a toe and I fall forward and I go into a baseball slide. Like I'm sliding into second base and I slide down 35, 40, 45 feet, go off a boulder. At the bottom of this ice slab, there's a pile of snow. I hit the pile of snow and I'm fine. I thought I was dead. I didn't know what was happening. I was freaking out. Totally fine. Tara comes down, our friend comes down. We finish our day. No big deal. 2 days later, I'm talking to a friend of mine and he says, hey, did you hear what happened to our friend Russ? And I said, no, what happened? Well, he was in the Catskills and he slipped on ice and he fell off of like a 20-foot cliff and like broke his arm and he had surgery in his arm. Turns out that was his blood. He was going up Sugarloaf, tripped, slid backwards, took a 20-footer off of a ledge and smashed his arm on a boulder. We saw his blood as we were coming in. He had left. We didn't know how dangerous things were until 2 days later. So fortunately, I have never really gotten hurt in the Catskills, but I've been danger adjacent. Mm-hmm. And it's enough to make you go, I'm going to make sure I have the right gear. I'm going to make sure I'm with the right people. And I'm going to make sure I pay attention all the time because the littlest slip, these mountains are little, but they pack a punch.
Well, for me, it was the last September. I always run my escarpment trail another day because I can't do it race day. And this year I didn't get around to it till September. And so I was running. It was a cool night. And I got going up Blackhead. Sun was out on the rocks. It was starting to warm up. And make a long story short, I got bit by a rattlesnake going up Blackhead, but I didn't know it. I just reached up on a rock. And all of a sudden I'm thinking, why am I bleeding so bad? And fortunately, it was a dry bite. I never saw the snake. But I got to the top and I stopped. I let the bleeding slow down. I'm thinking, I can't really see where the heck I'm cut here. And anyway, I really got showered, had it home, finished up, couldn't really see any lacerations. And then the next morning I had the 2 scabs. Jay was one of the guys I called, Jay Friedman, and he said, oh, yeah.
Great in those situations. I was like, what do you do to get bit by a rattlesnake? He's like, don't move, but get to a hospital as quickly as you can. I'm like,
right.
That makes sense.
25 to 30% of the time an adult rattlesnake bites you, it does not inject venom. It's called the dry bite.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky to
and that's just kind of them shooting a warning shot across the bow there, like just kind of back off.
Yeah, they don't plan to eat you because you're too big, And so like I came up and he must have been sunning himself on the rock, and I put my hand up and just bang, get out of here. Yeah. I didn't even really know what happened. It's like I thought, I'm bleeding. Was it that I get it? Because you know how those trees are. Mike was talking about those pine trees, but there weren't any there. I just couldn't figure it out. And thank God I didn't see the snake because I would have called somebody immediately and got out of there. But I got to finish.
Just reminded me of another precarious situation on Sugarloaf a number of years ago. So I'm going up Sugarloaf and I'm just out for like an after work session, just doing the loop. And I'm just like hammering up as hard as I can. And I get to a ledge and I look over and there's a naked man and I fell. He jumped up, grabbed his blanket, covered himself. And then I went, I'm going to keep going. And I kept going. That was scary.
Yeah.
It's the ghost of the Catskill naked man. It's just been making hikers fall for generations now.
Yeah, I lost composure.
Oh, you need more naked men in your life, I guess. Yeah, work on that composure. And any Phil, any for you, or have you? I mean, anything of note?
Balsam Lake during the FKT on the winter FKT?
Yeah. I mean, so when I was doing the winter FKT on the 33, Mike and I are going up, and it's a pretty good crazy
Balsam
night.
Lake Mountain.
Balsam Lake, and it's in the dark, and we're rolling up the mountain, and we traveled fairly light. I've got my spikes with me, but there's a little bit of snow down, but not much. And I'm like, I won't put them on yet. I'll be okay.
The bottom of that is a road, so you kind of get like ruts and then a bulge and a rut. So the water and the ice are in the little valleys there, so you can walk on the grass and be totally fine.
Yeah, so
until you're not.
We're cruising up, but the wind's ripping. I mean, I think it's like probably close to zero, below zero, I think.
Oh, we had negative wind chills,
yeah. I think on the summit it's like -10.
Yeah, it was cold.
So we're rolling up there, and I'm like, I'm going to put the spikes on a minute. And like literally about 2 minutes after that, I just slip over and just fall over. Like went down hard, hit my knee. It was hurting, and I was like, shit.
Yeah. This is the first day of his FKT attempt.
There's like no snow. Yeah. There's no ice anywhere that I could see. But I find the one little patch of like disguised ice and fall over on it, and I busted up my knee. But I mean, it was bruised. It wasn't terrible. But yeah, that was a bit of a shocker.
Yeah.
But of course, Mike, he stays upright on everything. He's not a good gauge of conditions. I've been up I think I went up Rusk with him one time, and I was like, it's so icy. So I think he bare booted the whole thing.
And Mindy.
Yeah.
Both put spikes on.
And eventually I said, we got to stop. I got to put my spikes on. I'm not following you anymore without my spikes on. He was like, fine.
I think it's fun.
He just bare booted. I was like,
no,
no way. I'm not carrying the spikes up and not using them when I need them.
All right, so sometimes you're starting in the dark, sometimes not. How about if it's not a really push day, best breakfast in the Catskills before you start your day?
I mean, I'm a big fan of Stewart's. I like going into Stewart's. I'm like, they have a bit of everything in there.
Solid. Yeah.
The bagel store in Newport's is pretty good. I'll grab a couple of those before I hit, a few mornings when I was going up, I'd go in there, get an egg and bacon something, and then get a bagel for lunch.
Davenport Farms in High Falls.
Right.
Davenport's is pretty solid. You can get a little egg and cheese and a tuna sandwich for later. And some apple cider donuts, coffee. They kind of got it all there. Apple.
Yeah, for sit-down breakfast, I'm going with the Phoenicia Diner.
Yeah. And Sweet Sue's when they're
open.
Can't
beat that as well.
When they're open, yeah.
Yeah, when they're open. Sweet Sue's is pretty solid.
Yeah, Phoenicia's good. But the problem is I wouldn't have breakfast in there because I'd never get out of the place. But after I've been hiking, to go in there is a great idea and get a whiskey milkshake when you leave.
Whiskey milkshake?
Drive home with a whiskey milkshake. Yeah.
Maybe they need to bring that to Stewart's then. I mean, Stewart's known for their milkshakes. Maybe just,
milkshake, that's crazy.
Yeah, Phoenicia Diner is great. That's definitely one of the best. And Brios for afterwards.
And Tannersville too is pretty good. But
what was the name, Dick?
Maggie's Crooked Cafe. But go there, you need time because sometimes it's a slow.
Yeah, there's some good places
they have
to eat in the
really
Cats.
Good baked goods at Maggie's.
Right.
Yes,
really good muffins and stuff. Yeah, that place is solid.
So long day out there. Say it's that August day where you just totally depleted and just chock full of bites from the black flies, but you're just depleted and you just want salt and basically fat, and you just kind of want to sit. Where are you going?
I'm getting a burger at the Sportsman Alamo.
Brios?
At Brios,
yeah. I'm going to Brios.
I'm getting a burger there. Yeah,
Brios is so good.
Yeah. Brios is kind of
Brios is good. It's actually for sale right now, apparently.
Ooh.
If you got a spare $5 million kicking around, you can buy it.
That's right.
You could probably do a crowdsource. I have at least 3 listeners right now. Everybody pitch in, a little bit. Probably get there in no time.
Yeah.
If we all kick in 1.25, I think we got it.
Yeah, Brios is good.
I think we can bargain them down to 1.2 each.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think we can do better than that, actually. Yeah.
We'll try.
Yeah.
Something that's always appealed to me in the Catskills is the ruins porn. I mean, just the history of the Catskills and why a lot of people were flocking to the Catskills and the old hotels. And I love looking at the images of back in their heyday and then versus how they are now. And people going in. Any favorite ruins porn coming out of the Catskills for any of you?
Well,
I mean, Overlook is the creepiest on a foggy day.
Yeah, and
that's
Travis is in.
All right, Travis.
I like that.
We only
We got
need-
videos. We locked it up.
You only need like
you can buy videos, but we could probably eat
Me.
So Overlook, is Overlook one of the old Grand Resorts? What's Overlook?
Yeah, Overlook a mountain house, and it's the ruins are still there. So if you hike up, it's
the
kind of,
walls are still there. The floors are not.
It's good.
The floors are wood. The walls are cement.
Yep.
You get there on a foggy afternoon. It's wild. It's wild in there. And you mentioned rattlesnakes. Boy, they love
Overlook. Has
they
so
love
many.
Overlook.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, if you're gonna make a rattlesnake farm, that's where you go to
Actually,
get your clientele.
I like when you get to Catskill High Peak, and it's kind of it's an interesting route because you go up there, you do a bit of bushwhacking, there's a plane wreck, and then you kind of bushwhack up again and get to the summit. And actually, one thing I didn't know, and I did it with Mike fairly recently, and he was like, Phil, look around for nails on the ground. And I was like, why?
Yeah.
I've been up here probably 15, 16 times on High Peak.
That's it.
Yeah, and Mike's like, look around for nails. I'm like, why? He's like, well, this used to be a fire tower up here.
Well, it wasn't a fire tower. It was a building.
It was a building,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. And we found nails. And I was like, I never knew that existed. I mean, there was an old structure up there. Yeah, incredible.
So
like,
if you go up the Hudson by boat and you look to the west, the highest peak from the Hudson appears to be Catskill High Peak.
It used to be considered the highest peak in the Catskills.
Yeah, so for a long time, we're going back, 1700s. That was considered to be the highest peak in the Catskills, and for a long time, I'm not a history buff in terms of details, but more of a generalist. There was a person who said, "I'm going to build a mountain house on the highest peak in the Catskills," and so he had his workers go up there, and they had built a little cabin. And they were like, sussing it out to build a mountain house. And then it turns out, well, you were off by 500, 600 feet. It's not even close to being the highest peak. And so it all fell apart. But there was a structure up there. And if you look around, I actually brought a big magnet up there one day to try and hunt for these nails. You can find these handmade nails that date to the late 1800s. They're very, very old.
And I think it was at Maley's Lookout there that there used to be I guess an old, it would have been a food truck today. It was a little place where somebody would set up a snack bar going up the mountain.
Yep. And there's rumors of a Revolutionary War era fort on the shoulder of Catskill, which is, I've never found any evidence of it, but apparently, some people have, but that's dating back a little bit, earlier than that. So there's,
that's a burly place to put the fort. That's a burly place to put a fort like back then. Are you stopping a massive army kind of coming through and up and over Catskill?
Apparently it was to like catch deserters from the Revolutionary Army. I don't, I've tried to read up on this and I can't quite make heads or tails of it, but people swear that it was there. And then it was a real thing. I don't know. I've searched many, many times.
Over by the Laurel House, which is on South Mountain, not far from North Lake, right at the top of Catskill Falls. And they used to have a little dam on the top of Catskill Falls in the dry season for August and stuff, when the water isn't flowing much. This fellow would dam up the creek. And then when people wanted to see the falls in all of its glory, they'd slip a couple of bucks. He'd open up the dam and off the water would go, and
the waterfall.
Have a waterfall. And
cue the waterfall.
Yeah.
So, and that is such a beautiful spot. So, and maybe also a silly question because it's depends on you in the moment and such a huge concept, but a place that is, you're at this spot and you're like, man, this is the most beautiful spot that I've ever been to.
That changes with the day. sometimes just being down by Diamond Notch Falls, that can be a beautiful little spot.
That was exactly the place that I thought of, Dick. It was exactly the place. There is, in my opinion, there is no place in the Catskills that is more beautiful than that little waterfall under the bridge in Diamond Notch.
I like the when you go in from the end of Big Hollow Road. It's nice up there, crossing the rivers and then starting to wind your way up to the Blackheads. Yeah, that's really nice as well. It's one of my favorite, like trailheads and kind of like walks into any of the peaks. It just, the forest is beautiful there. The water, the rivers, a lot of big boulders, quite rugged. Just a nice kind of start to any Catskill hike.
Yeah, I have a certain reverence for the Diamond Notch Falls because back in 2011, I think it was, on my birthday, I did the entire Devil's Path for the first time, and it was on that day that I learned what chafing was.
You didn't learn at Grindstone?
No, it was 2011.
Is that the year you wore your burlap shorts? Is that the one?
Well, I would have shown you my ass crack.
No, I had been running for exactly 1 year and never in the warm season. And I decided that I was going to do Devil's Path in a day. And so I actually went pretty fast. It was like 6.5 hours, which is pretty close to the FKT back then. Not even close now, but I came down and I was chafed everywhere, basically. And I laid down in that water at the base of those falls and I screamed. I screamed really loud by myself.
They're still purifying the water down.
And then I walked up Westkill, and my legs looked like I had just gotten off a horse because I couldn't allow my legs come anywhere near each other. But yes, it was still beautiful, even in that very, very brutal moment.
So you got into the water there, to the testament to fire.
It cooled down, man. I was trying.
And so any other, I really like swimming holes here and there. Any favorite swimming holes?
The blue hole's awful. Don't go.
Yeah, it's too, I mean, it is great, but it's just too crowded. I mean, it's just it's insanity there.
I don't know. I mean, Catskill swimming holes, I think, honestly, I'm not even playing here. I think they're overrated. Mm-hmm. The water is cold.
Right. You don't want to go in and just kind of hang out and enjoy yourself. Yeah.
It's not fun. Mm-hmm. You don't want to be in the water. You want to be hanging out, drinking beer, barbecuing on the shore. You can do that anywhere, or at someone's house with a pool and a hot tub. Like, it's not that awesome. Like, it's just too cold.
There's a few that are real nice that you have to trespass to get to, so I won't bring those up. But there's a couple right in Paleville that are still open and you can get to. Yeah. And if you want to hike up through Platte Clove,
stuff in there, right?
Really nice ones up there that nobody gets to, but you got to almost die to get.
God, so cold. I don't like cold water. I do it, but I don't like it. I do it as like therapy, like anti-inflammation stuff, but yeah.
All right. What other, any other gems, or are we missing that topics or slants or something that would be fun for an endurance audience, or something that would, something Catskills? Gear. Best gear spot in the Catskills if you want to get your gear on.
Well, I'm not quite the Catskills, but I would say rock and snow.
Yeah, not really. Yeah. You need two things in the Catskills. You need grip. You need all-terrain grip. So that means you need
winter
a shoe
and summer
with some kind of Vibram sole. You're not going to get away with Nikes or Reeboks or anything like that. You need like some
Crocs.
Or says the guy who wears Crocs to the crag every day. You need a shoe that has like an engineered rubber. So you need a La Sportiva, you need a Hoka, you need some of the Solomon shoes, you need an Ultra shoe, like something with like Vibram or a rubber where somebody has put some thought into this shoe needs to stick to the ground so the wearer doesn't die. The Catskills are slick. They are just slick. They're slick in summer. They're slick in winter.
Yeah.
You go to the Adirondacks. You go to the Whites. You're on crystalline rock. You can walk up there in a pair of tennis shoes and be fine. The Catskills are slick as snot. I have run the escarpment race, I don't know, 8 times, something like that. I've done Manitou 6 times. I would rather have it rain than be humid on those days. Because when it rains, wet rock is fine. Humid rock is snot. You can't stick. Ben Nephew, multiple time everything runner, wears shoes with carbide spikes in them in summer because he knows at least they'll slide across the rocks consistently. He doesn't even pretend that the rubber's going to work. That's the Catskills. It's slippery.
Yeah.
Slippery, muddy,
There's
nasty,
definitely something about
slimy.
the Catskills
That is different.
where
That is unique.
it always wants to have a little piece of you. You know, most times I've come back and I have a bit of blood running from me. You know, like I've never been out there really and not had a cut or a graze or a bruise or a it always asks for a little something in return.
Yeah.
Manitou, you know, Dick.
You hit a knee on a rock, you get stabbed in the eye, you know.
You know, there's a legend of Manitou that the escarpment and some of that goes over, which is, you know, Manitou was a demon that would haunt some of the Native Americans. And one day a brave stood tall and slayed Manitou. And when he fell to his death, he turned to stone and formed that northern escarpment. And we always like to say that Manitou's out there and he's trying to get us. Yeah. And whenever something that happens, we blame it on Manitou. So, by the way, there is a new store called Camp Catskill in Tannersville. It's a small outdoor store, but it's got real nice gear.
Oh, really?
Yep. And then Kenco, another place is got some good gear. Kenco's right in Kingston, right off of Route 28.
Yep.
So
yeah, Kenco looks okay. Yep. And I think in the winter, like a lot of people will like mess around with micro spikes, but just get a pair of Catula trail crampons
or Hillsound
trail crampons. Yeah. Like you're better to have more traction than you think you need. Like I've never been unhappy. I have too much traction.
Yeah. You said that's for winter use or your?
Yeah, for winter.
I would say year round a little more than what you think you need is what you need. And that's not a Catskill thing. That's a mountain.
That's anywhere, yeah.
That's a mountain. That's a mountain thing that you should, you should think about that. I'm going to bring a little more than I think I need, regardless of your fitness level, regardless of your experience. Bring a little more than you think you need.
My old pair of Catulas for sort of like the mixed condition stuff.
Yeah.
You know, you're on the ice, you're on the ground, dirt, you're on the ice, because they handle walking on bare rocks, but I think better than the Hillsounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hillsounds are totally
They bend.
They're a little softer, yeah.
Yeah, the Catulas, you have smaller spikes linked by chain, where the Hillsounds are more of a plate.
Yeah.
So, it is interesting covering some of those sections out there, at least on the courses, and seeing all of the little micro scrape marks on courses. And I'm thinking each time I'm going through, like, how many of these are Ben's carbide tip from the amount of times he's been over there. Like, how many of these scratches are from Ben? I mean, I know some of them may be from poles, but somebody's clearly hammering over these in carbide tips, and I'm thinking how many of those are from Ben.
And you're the inside scoop now. You're going to beat him this year. You're going to beat him.
I would actually think those are more of crampons than the carbides. The carbide is a harder material. It doesn't tend to slide as much unless. So Ben, I had this conversation with Ben a number of years ago. He sees himself when he's running in those wet conditions like a skateboarder, where he like jumps on a rail and slides down it, or grinds across a curb. In dry conditions, he'll wear some rubber shoe, which is fine. I don't think that's what you're seeing. I think you're seeing people in crampons that don't know what's going on, and they don't know how to place their foot, and they're
Or in snowshoes.
and they're slipping, or snowshoes and you're slipping and sliding.
Yeah. Because a lot on snowshoes, you're going up that steep stuff, and it's got a little ice on it, but then it starts to slide back, and your crampons slide through the ice and scratch the rock.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. That's the highest concentration, probably, I don't know, half mile in from the finish of escarpment or something like that. Kind of in those slabs or some of those rocks in there. They're pretty dotted up.
That's gets a lot of hiker traffic there.
Yeah,
day hiker, hour hiker.
On the bushwhacked as well, you can see a few crampon scrapes on rocks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, anything else that would be fun to plug on the Catskills at all before I let you guys go and try to catch my kids before bed?
I mean, I would say that like the Catskills, every mountain, every peak trail has like something special about it. I mean, it's quite addictive. Like a lot of people maybe say it's not as big as this mountain or as hard as this mountain, but I would say overall the Catskills is pretty magical. I think between the geology of it and the recent history, the human history of it, I think it's like a very, very interesting area. And the Catskills now has a lot of stuff going on in terms of like breweries, places to eat. There's a lot of fun times to be had there. The winters are great. The summer, every season has something special. And I would say, get out there and enjoy a lot of the trails and the bushwhacks that are there. It has a lot of redeeming qualities. It's a great place to get out.
Yeah, and I think, like you were saying, those forests at the top, many of the Catskills have those boreal forests, and it's moss, and it's not a lot of topsoil on the ground, and you just get an incredible vegetation. And you go through there, especially I kind of like it like on a rainy day where it's just so green and the moss on the trees and stuff. And
you get the water droplets on the moss.
Yes, bushwhack from Rocky to Balsam Cap, when you go through that moss section, is like it's one of the best sections in the Catskills, and that makes me a little sad at times to think there might be a herd path through that one time, because that is the most amazing soft green moss. I remember the first time I did it at Mike, and I was just like, we were walking through it, and it was just like, it's just the most amazing like area, and it does make me sad to think of all the foot traffic through there. Yeah. They just have this like incredible like
they're enchanted forests. They're enchanted forests. You expect to see a little.
So, I mean, from my personal perspective, I know that the DEC and the various hiking clubs, they're kind of promoting this idea of we should establish herd paths. And, I've been around here long enough to really experience that enchanted forest, this wildness, like where the hell am I kind of thing. There's no herd paths out here. And I it's probably inevitable that we have some kind of designated herd paths that they have in the Adirondacks. But I kind of hope that we don't. I think the climate has been and is becoming more in a climate where the forest can heal itself to a certain extent. And I don't know, even if we do have some kind of designated herd paths, they're not going to make them trails. You're still going to be able to go out there and find your own little wild experience. Just because a trail goes up the east side of the mountain, why not go up the west side? Why not? There's no reason not to. Oh, it's harder? Okay. So, big deal. Like, the Catskills are a mountain range that makes you work for it. I don't know how, I've never looked at it, but a much higher percentage of the Adirondack 46 and the White Mountains and the peaks in Maine give you views from the summit. The Catskills give you a jack. They give you nothing. You go to Colorado, the trailhead gives you a better view than the Catskills give you from the summit. They've always been a mountain range that makes you work for it. So keep working for it.
And I would also say as well, it's like, you don't need to have views in the Catskills to have a good time. Like, I've been walking in forest there with Mike, and like,
just gotta hang out with this guy,
and like just see these crazy like massive trees like coming off like North Dome, bushwhacking down through a section of like hemlocks there, and it's enormous fucking hemlocks, massive hemlocks. And then we just walking through
or a big rock that slid off, and you can see exactly where it attached to the cliff.
Just, this, like, you don't just always need views there. There's so many other interesting things.
The views are what's in front of you.
What I like to compare the Adirondacks and the Catskills in the sense that I like the summits of the Adirondacks, but I like the trails in the Catskills. Yeah. The trails getting to the summit.
There are good trails. And I think, like, people talk about, like, where on the trails, but they're actually pretty good trails. Like, if you go to the Dacks and see some of the trails, they're pretty fucked, some of those trails.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to swear.
So when Phil and I hiked in the Adirondacks this summer, one of the first comments he made was how awful the trails are up there. Just absolute shit. You're on boulders. You're jumping from some weird.
You're hiking gullies
to another. You're trying to like not go up to your knee in mud. We got to a point where I went through this mud section. I turned around. I said, "You can't go yet. Let me get my video going on my phone."
You want to see me go
because I want to see you go face first in this mud pit. Because that was the humor of the day. That's like, it was fun because we like taking the piss out of each other, but like that's not your typical hiking enjoyment. We're weird. If you want like
a face pump.
Exactly. and we would laugh and we talking about it all day. But like if you're talking about like real proper enjoyment of the mountains, the Catskills have that above and beyond the Adirondacks, above and beyond the Whites, above and beyond all the mountains in Maine. There's just something special about these mountains.
Yeah, there's definitely some like something that's kind of magical about them, I think.
Yep. And there's still a lot of the Catskills. If you know where to go, you can hike and be on the trail by yourself for the most part.
Oh yeah, totally.
You don't even have to try that hard.
Yeah. And there are many, even like just the bushwhack approaches that just people just never do,
Yeah. I've bushwhacked all the peaks that are trailed. Just because. Why not? Why not make it harder? You're not going to get shit at the summit anyway.
I'm not a fan. I like the summits more than you do, Mike.
I like getting to the top and not having to go up anymore. Don't get me wrong.
The only thing I don't like about the summits is usually like if you go to Sugarloaf and you go to that beautiful view, there's some guy's got his hammock strung across it, and
or he's naked in my case.
Same guy, maybe the same guy.
Same guy.
So here's a little bit of detail in the Catskills. I'm not saying it was that guy, but if you know where to look, not near the actual summit of Twin, but on the false summit of Twin, there is graffiti etched into the rock, and it says "nude equals free." I'm just saying.
All right.
I don't know. You've seen it. I've shown you.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's the next grid attempt. Is you're going to cover everyone in every month naked? Maybe there.
As you said, Mike, he doesn't want to be there in August.
God no. It's way too many bug bites in bad places.
That's right.
Well, guys, thanks for being on here a while. Thanks. The collective experience for you guys and what you've put into the Catskills. There are some nuggets there, and I was kind of looking. I think when we really got into the details and the recommendations, and I think from like maybe an hour and 25 on, I'm gonna have to replay this and take notes, or I'll just text you and ask you for the cliff notes there. But for all of your miles and trials and experiences, I appreciate you relaying them just a bit here. So I'm grateful.
Thanks. This is more like a day in my living room with these guys than it was
I mean, it's Dick's deck there, just chatting about the Catskills with him, eating food, looking at his view, and that's so nice as well. It's like the Catskill people kind of like we hang out and chat, and it was great when I finished my effort in the Cats. I I was in a bit of a pinch because I had someone who was going to come with me, and they couldn't drop me to do the car drop on the Eastern Dells path. I contacted Dick, and Dick was like, "Yeah, of course I'll meet you. That's fine." You know, like it was great. And like Dick's doing the drop, and he's like talking about the Western states he's done. Like you don't believe that. Like you're driving a guy that's done like multiple Western states finishes. You know, like just a casual guy in the Catskills dropping you to a Catskill effort, multiple Western states finisher, other 100 mile. You know, like it's another great thing about the Catskills. You meet all these people that have done these amazing things, and it's just casual, just hiking, having a beer, having a pizza, whatever. Like nice on your last day on a big 1 year Catskill effort, you get dropped off by a Western States legend like that,
Well, but I was dropping off a legend, so
Well, in proper Catskills style, he finished by himself.
Yeah.
He couldn't wait for any of us to join him because we have jobs. Sorry, Phil.
I'm gonna get a job. I'm really working on that in the next year.
I'm still mad. I'm still mad that he didn't finish on a day where I could join him.
He'll get over it.
Because I've been there. You were there for my big days, and I've been there for your big days. And that's good. That's what you get when you get a bunch of mountain people together. You get people that need to be there for your big days. And Dick, I was there for your Catskill finish.
You were. We had a good time that time.
Anyone's Catskill finish that I know that they're my friend, and I will, if I can be there, I'm going to be there. And that's how all of us are.
And I feel like if I could keep up, I'd be there. So.
You've been there for all of us.
Well,
you've been there for all
it sure has been a great addition to my life, you guys. So
yeah, well, we're honored to be involved in yours.
By the way, Mike, first Wednesday in June, High Rock Run Up.
I'm going to be there.
Yeah.
You know what happened to me last time?
I'll be better. I'll be worse than last year. It'll be great.
I did it nice, and I went and did that run.
So yeah, there's another story. So Phil and I go and do the 9 in June. We're dying. We had an awful day. We're like dehydrated. We're drinking beers on the tailbed of my truck, and I go, Phil,
you want to go do the high road?
I said you gotta. It's too bad you have to go home and take care of your dog. And he goes, Nah, Siobhan got the dog. I go, what do you mean? I don't have the dog. I go, we can be at Dick's in an hour and a half to do High Rock. And he goes, all right, let's go.
Yeah. Well, we had to stop and get beer and snacks.
We bought beer and Coke. Not that Coke. Coca-Cola.
Yeah. Catskills aren't that good.
I should have gone with the other Coke. I would have done better. But yeah, so we ran High Rock after doing the 9 in June after beers. It did not go well.
We did have a beautiful day, though.
Pretty well.
We had a beautiful day, a great time afterwards, telling lies and carrying on.
Yeah, they're all truths. What are you talking about? They just sound like lies.
So, Pizarro, you guys mentioned it. You might as well plug it. What's the formality? What's the
High Rock? It's an informal run I have from my house up to High Rock, which I was up there today, by the way. It's 2.1 miles from my house, gains 1,000 feet. And we race up, self-timed. We wait at the top for everybody and run down various ways together.
It is brutal.
And then we
Yeah.
And it's the first Wednesday evening in June. So, we get 40, 50 people.
I spent about 10 years as a rock climber. And then in 2010, a friend of mine, Felix, said, hey, you should come do this run at Dick Vincent's house. And I said, I don't run. And he goes, no. It's only 2.25 miles or whatever, 2.2 miles. It's uphill. It's basically hiking. You're a good hiker. You should come do it. I'm like, I don't run. I don't race. He goes, it's $2. I go, okay, I'll go. So that was my introduction to this whole mob of amazing maniacs like Dick and Joe Brown and Stuart and Jimmy Buff and all these other crazy people.
That was how you started running, right?
That was it, man. That was day one. Yeah.
So now when I'm going to put the race on, the first text I do is send it to Mike.
Yep. I always get invites, so I appreciate that. It started that chapter in my life.
Well, Dick, you have to give me if you think about it or you remember, give me the heads up.
Put you on the list right now,
and I'll plug it. That's I think that's
good times.
Yeah,
I think that's right around my wife's
Fun.
birthday this year, so I don't know if I could pull that off, but I could at least plug it. Let's see, the first Wednesday in June.
You're going to do a 2-mile
birthday
run.
next year. It's fine.
Her birthday is June 7th, and that is June 7th this year. Yeah,
I thought it was June 4th. Huh? Jeez.
our marriage is good at the moment. The relationship's good. I'm gonna try to keep it that way if I can.
It makes two
Good
of us.
idea.
Yeah.
Well, you know what you could do is you could bring your wife.
Yeah.
All right, actually, that's a thought. I'm sure that's what she would want to do together for her birthday is me taking her to another running event.
She will be a birthday she remembers.
There are always chocolate chip cookies at that race. Always.
Oh, she couldn't eat them, but I could. Yeah, it keeps getting better in terms of me putting it out there as a deal. Yeah.
Somebody always brings carrots and celery and hummus.
That works. She can do
There
2 or 3. Yeah, that's good.
There's a couple of vegans there. We're good.
Yeah,
There are. There's everything.
all right. All right. I'm gonna boot you guys off, dude. That was fun. Thank you
very much, Dick.
Thanks.
It was great to see you.
Great to see you
The
guys.
last time I saw you was a legendary day.
That was a great day.
Every day's a legendary day, probably when people see Dick.
Thank
Most people, it's probably a legendary day. Yeah.
It's a legendary day when I see. So, you know, if I get up and I can see it, it's a legendary day.
Right on.
You would
All right. Now I'm officially booting you guys off, and I will talk to you all soon.
All right,
Thank
guys.
you very much.
Good to see you soon in person.
All right.
Bye-bye.
All right. So for those who are with us, thank you so much. For those who are listening after in podcast version, I really appreciate it. I really enjoy these conversations, opportunity to see friends that I don't get to see often enough and to just chat. And that's what I hope also that these things are. So thank you, Dick, and thank you, Mike and Phil and Jay for joining us in the beginning. And yeah, so I'm going to hit it. So thanks for being with this episode, and I will check in with you next week. Next week, I think we may go Monday night, having David Kilgore on, and we'll see who else I have on as well. So until that time, see ya.